Hi, everybody. It's Mr. Denny. What we're going to look at next, our next unit here, is going to be on the human factors of air travel and spaceflight. So, how does the pilot, how do we keep them functional? How do we keep them alive so that they can do the things they need to do as a pilot? So, what this is actually called is physiology. The term physiology, you'll see it here, is the study of how the human body works. And so when we talk about flight physiology, we talk about the factors that are needed in a flying machine, either an airplane or a spacecraft, the factors that are going to be needed to keep the pilot safe and functional. So today what we're going to look at is just some of the basics, and we're going to get into this in a little bit more detail as we go on. So human factors. Basically, a couple things to keep in mind. Uh, Up until not all that long ago, every every plane was flown by a person sitting in the plane. Um, Unmanned vehicles, UAVs, drones have kind of changed that some. In many of those situations, we still have pilots. They're just remotely controlling the plane. In some situations, we have vehicles that are starting to fly entirely autonomously on their own. But most often, there's still a person somewhere in there that's making decisions. This is gradually changing, but by and large is still the most common. So, flight physiology, we're talking about the pilots here. There might be one or more. Um, a lot of small planes have one pilot. Large planes like that are going on very long um, missions like B-2 bombers take off from Missouri and go halfway across the world and come back on one flight will actually take four pilots and they rotate in and out. And the abilities and reactions of these pilots um, limit the design of aircraft and how they can operate. So, for example, if a pilot, takes a tenth of a second to be able to react to turbulence, to adjust something in the airplane has to be able to withstand turbulence for several times longer than that to give the pilot time to respond. Or if a pilot can only pull 6 Gs for 2 or 3 seconds before blacking out, you have to build that into the design of the airplane. Overall, people are sort of the main weak link in most aviation accidents. It says 70% of aviation accidents are human error. Um, Other factors, the other 30% are mechanical failures in the airplane, something physically breaks, and weather. The most common is human error, weather is the second most common, and physical mechanical failure of the airplane is the least common. There's a department of the government called the NTSB, the National Transportation Safety Board. They are the ones that investigate whenever there's an airplane crash. Not only airplane crashes, they also investigate like trains and things like that, major transportation hubs. But they're the ones that retrieve like the black boxes and figure out what went wrong. So when we think about how a person fits into the airplane, we kind of think of these four things. So there's software. This is the actual programming of the computers on the plane. It involves the electrical setup of it and how all of that works together. Most planes have some software in them now. You still can, get planes that are basically without software. Hardware. Hardware is the physical plane itself, the metal pieces, the engines, the oil pumps, the flaps, all of the physical parts of the plane is the hardware. The environment is everything around the plane. So, are you flying through a thunderstorm? Is there turbulence, downdrafts, anything like that? What's going on in the air around the plane? Or if you're in space, what's going on, maybe even with whether you're in the shadow or the sun, the temperatures around you, and the vacuum, any of that type of stuff. And then liveware is the people, the pilots that are actually flying the machine. So there's a couple of ways that the liveware, the people, can have failures. And the most troubling one is called incapacitation, and this is basically where the person suddenly cannot, I guess not suddenly, the person cannot perform the duties necessary. Sometimes this is sudden. This could be like they had a heart attack or something. It could be subtle, like if your pilot's been drinking. They can be total, which means like the pilot is completely incapable. It could just be partial, where they're just maybe not on the top of their game. They could be distracted. And then, do you recognize what's happening? Does the co-pilot recognize it? Does the stewardess recognize it? Does the air traffic controllers recognize something's wrong, or do they not? So those are kind of terms and different variations on liveware failure. And these are usually caused by a failure in one or more of your body systems. Now, this isn't a biology class. I'm imagining that you've had biology or anatomy and you've covered these in more detail, but we're just going to hit on them real quick, because when we understand each body system that you need to keep a person functioning properly, then you can start designing life support systems inside vehicles, and you look at each of those individual systems and say, okay, we have to have something that takes care of this, something that takes care of that. And we're going to look at that more in the next few days. So the cardiovascular system, this is your heart, your arteries, all of that stuff. This is getting blood around your body. It carries oxygen to your cells. The circulation blood carries the carbon dioxide away. It gets nutrients to your cells, all those sorts of things that your blood is needed for. Your central nervous system, this is your brain and your nerves and your spinal cord. This is basically what gets the signals from your brain to your muscles to tell them to do things, and then gets the signals from your senses, so either your sense of touch or smell or sight, back to your brain so that it has information to work on. The musculoskeletal system is all of your bones and muscles. This is basically what allows you to move around. Some of them are really big, like the muscles in your arms and legs. Some of them are very tiny, like you have muscles that allow you to move like your ears up and down half an inch. So obviously some are more important than the others. And your respiratory system, this is breathing. So you're breathing in the oxygen, you're breathing out the carbon dioxide waste from your metabolic functions. And your metabolic system is basically you bringing in food and fuel into your cells and then converting it and getting energy out and taking away the waste products from that. This is usually a relatively slow system, and most of the time this isn't the one that's going to cause a sudden failure. Then you also have the vestibular system. This is like your inner ear. It gives you a sense of balance. It allows pilots to be able to tell like when planes have leveled off or how steep turns are without having to look at instruments. This is not entirely reliable. There are certain disorders, for example, like vertigo, that really mess with your inner ear system. And also, pilots have been known to fly through fog and to think they're flying level and have the plane almost entirely standing on its wingtip. So your inner ear can get messed up. And so it's also very important that pilots learn to use their instruments and to rely on their instruments above their actual senses when they're flying, especially in adverse conditions. All right, so that was kind of our quick introduction to it. We are going to look at that more as we go through the next few days.